Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Um, Excited to have you here. I'm LL.M. I'm an EducationUSA advisor with PUC-Rio in Rio de Janeiro. Welcome to the third day of the EducationUSA WHA LL.M webinar series. Today, we're going to be hearing from a few law schools in the United States on the topic of different LL.M concentrations in the bar exam. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that EducationUSA is the official source on studies and academic opportunities in the United States. We are present in more than 400 offices around the world and more than 40 offices here in Brazil. So if you are a Brazilian student who has questions about how you can apply for an LL.M program, please reach out to EducationUSA, the center that's closest to you. And we'll be happy to work with you. Luckily, we'll be hearing directly from people who are working inside these law schools, these law departments, at some of the best universities in the US today. So make sure to bring them your questions. So throughout the presentation, you will be able to use the chat function. If you want to drop questions, you won't be able to unmute yourselves. But at the end of this part of the session, this group part of the session, you're going to receive links to individual Zoom rooms where you can go and bring your questions directly to the schools, the departments that you want to talk to. So make sure that when that comes at the end of the presentation, you copy all the links that I'll make available here on the chat function, save it somewhere else so you're able to go to more than one room, because we'll be wrapping up, we'll be ending the session here on this room. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Anya Grossman from Berkeley Law. Thank you so much. I think we're not able to hear you, Anya, sorry.
Sorry, I was not able to unmute myself. Thank you. So thanks everyone for joining us here. We really appreciate it. I'm Anya Grossman. I'm the Director of Global Outreach for the LL.M program at Berkeley Law. We have a lot to get through, so I will just go ahead and jump right in. Next slide, please. So first, let's talk about what types of LL.M concentrations even exist. You might be hearing about all different types of LL.M programs, and it might be a little confusing. Part of the reason is because the US legal education system doesn't actually require standardization in graduate legal degrees. So we all kind of have slightly different things. Different types of degrees that you might see LL.M schools offering are a general LL.M, so just a master's of law, a general LL.M with the ability to specialize, earn a certificate, or otherwise demonstrate gaining a particular area of expertise during your studies. There's also an LL.M degree in a particular practice area, which means that is the language that will show up on your diploma. And then, of course, there are also programs offered at a graduate level that are not masters of laws, so they can be a master's in a legal field. So there's all different kinds of degrees that exist out there. What you want to ask for, if this is important to you, ask the schools what will show up on your diploma when you graduate. Other information, such as specializations or certificates, might show up on your transcript. So you might still be able to demonstrate this. It might just show up in different areas. Next slide, please. So what's the point of all of this? Well, different forms of concentration allow law schools to highlight their area of strength, whether that is depth, breadth, or a combination of those two. And it also allows you to choose the program that works best for your future goals. So that's something really important to keep in mind. And then at the end, you can be like these students here in this photo, graduating. Next slide. So finding the degree or concentration that's best for you is done when you really consider your goals. So use that to help you narrow down your choices. And our students come with all different goals for study, and you can have some or multiple of these, and maybe something that's not even on this list. Some of our students come because they want to explore new areas of study. Others want to deepen their knowledge in an existing area of practice or specialty, so what you already are doing in your studies or in your career. Some of our students come and do an LL.M because they want to pivot their practice area. They've been working in one area, they want to move to another area, and LLM can be a great way to do that. Some of our students really just want to demonstrate to future potential employers an area of expertise, whether that's something that you're in the process of getting or a new one. What's important is that you want to show potential employers that you do have this area of expertise. And of course, some of our students are pursuing US bar exam eligibility. And my colleagues here will talk plenty more about the bar in a minute. Next slide. So something to keep in mind is the more focused you are on a particular area of study, the more you may want to consider an LLM program offering a specialized LLM degree or a general LLM degree with a certificate of specialization. On the other hand, if what you're most excited about in pursuing this advanced degree is the ability to be flexible with your course selection, you might want to consider an LLM program that offers a general LLM degree or one with otherwise flexible course enrollment requirements. So all of our schools are slightly different in this regard. A lot of us offer multiple versions. So you're going to want to reach out to the schools individually and find out what they offer. Next slide. And I'll just leave you with a couple of do's and don'ts with regard to LLM concentrations. Do let the availability of specialized LLM degrees, certificates, or concentrations guide your course enrollment. But you should not assume that concentrations limit course offerings. Many schools, even those with specialized LLMs and certificates, will offer courses in all different practice areas, regardless of the degree concentration. So yet again, you should be asking questions. Do look up the course selection at each school in which you're interested. That's a great way to find out if there will be courses that excite you. And do show employers your area of interest in lots of places, including your transcript, your CV, student groups you join, pro bono work. There's all different ways to show potential areas of specialty and areas of interest. So most importantly, do find the LLM program that is best for your specific goals. And that might not be the same goals that other people come here with. So it's all very individualized. And with that, I will hand it off to my colleague, Juan.
Well, thank you so much, Anya. Well, thank you, Tim, also. My name is Juan Del Valle. I am the Director of International Programs and the lecturer in law here at Washington University School of Law. I'm actually also an LLM graduate, so I'm originally from Colombia and came here to Washington in 2009, graduated in 2010 from an LLM that we call LL.M in US Law. So I always like, whenever I talk about LLM programs, kind of approach it from my own experience. I was once in the same shoes that you're right now, right? Evaluating whether you want to really pursue an LLM, where you want to pursue it, what to look for. So I totally understand if you might be a little bit anxious and nervous, right? It is not easy. So Tim, can we go for the next one, please? Thank you so much. So options of specialized courses, right? And this, of course, is highly related with what Anya was talking about, the different concentrations and the different options that law schools offer within the LLM program. So put a little bit, can we go back, please? I'm sorry. Thank you so much. So things to consider always is whether there is integration in between the LLM and the JD program in the law school that you're choosing. And if I can explain really fast, what happens is that whenever the law school or a law school offers you an LLM that is integrated with the JD program, that normally translates into a better and larger amount of courses that you can actually choose from, because you will be having access to most and sometimes all of the courses offered by the law school. This will, of course, also give you access to upper level courses, right? More specialized courses, depending on what you're looking for. It is important to understand whether the law school is offering you only theoretical courses or also practical courses to kind of have a nice combination over there. And it is also important if you have maybe that interest like I had 13 years ago, of maybe being able to take a course out of the business school, out of the School of Arts, right? Another school within the same opportunity, the same university. I think that really gives you a little bit of a better experience within the program. Can we move to the next one, please? Thank you. New, interesting, in-demand concentration areas. I don't have a list of every single concentration area that is offered out there. by every single law school. I kind of try to put some of the most common ones and most trending ones right now. As I told you, for example, I studied the LL.M in US law, which is really aimed at students that, well, either want to really practice law in the United States after completing their LL.M program, or at least work closely with US legal matters, as that was my goal. There is always international law, private and public, always trending, important. Negotiation and alternative dispute resolution or amicable dispute resolution practices. Always important, and I think every time it will be more and more important to for us to become attorneys that can actually learn how to solve problems instead of making them bigger. So that is one that I like. Compliance, litigation, intellectual property and technology law, of course, another growing area of law around the world. And as my colleague Anya said, well, the general LL.M, which has no specific concentration. Can we move to the next one, please? Thank you. Going a little bit deeper into this concentration and certificates, just as my colleague Anya said, yes, concentrations are normally those LL.M in whatever, right? LL.M in intellectual property, LL.M in negotiation and dispute resolution. Now, what happens whenever you choose one of those concentrations is that you're going to be using a larger amount of credits normally within the specific area that you choose, leaving you with a little bit less amount of credits out there to choose other courses. Now, certificates normally are another option offered by law schools, and those certificates will demand that you use a lesser amount of credits within the specific area, giving you a little bit more flexibility if you want to think about this and taking courses from different areas. That was, for example, what I wanted to do back then, because I was not really aimed at one area of law. I wanted to learn from different areas. So certificates, I think, is also a very nice way to look for specializations. Now, the next one. Thank you. This important question. Do I have to choose a specialization that is related to my work experience? Well, several things there. First of all, not all of us have work experience before we pursue our LL.M program, right? So my answer would be no, definitely not, right? Because maybe you do not have any work experience, but you do have certain areas that you're focused in. That was exactly what happened to me, right? I didn't have a lot of work experience, right? But I knew that I liked mostly commercial law and business law, and that was a little bit of my focus. Another thing is, of course, you need to know what your goals are. If you don't have everything already figured out, don't worry. It did happen to me that I figured out a lot of things throughout my LL.M program. As a matter of fact, I fell in love with my area of concentration right now, which is negotiations. Here in the LL.M program, it was my first time studying negotiations. I took it throughout my LL.M and it changed my life. So I think if you don't have things figured out, don't worry. This is a very nice chance to explore. I think that if you choose a law school that offers you a nice amount of different diverse areas, is going to be, really, really good for your professional future. And the next one, please. Oh, that was it. So now I'm going to hand it to Tim. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Juan. Hi, everyone. My name is Timothy Stan, and I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Admissions at NYU School of Law. Now that you've heard about different types of programs, I'd like to begin the discussion of bar exams by offering some very general advice. To help provide some context, my law school offers 9 different LL.M degrees, 1 you can customize to your goals, and 8 LL.M specializations. In the years that I have been in charge of graduate admissions, I've counseled thousands of foreign-trained applicants about these master's programs and the choice that each student has made regarding the bar exam. So to start with a question, perhaps it seems like a rather simple question, but how you answer it may impact how you plan for your LL.M studies. Given what's involved in seeking to establish eligibility for a state's bar exam, we advise that you carefully consider some important factors before deciding whether you will combine your studies with a plan to become licensed to practice in 1 or more US jurisdictions. It's certainly worth figuring out beforehand the reasons behind your motivation to becoming licensed. It may be unsurprising that many of the foreign-trained LLMs at NYU Law use their master's year in part to establish eligibility for the New York bar exam. But oftentimes, I will approach conversations with students from a very basic starting point. Is this something that you merely want to do? Is it solely a credentialing process divorced from other considerations? Or are you thinking about this just because it seems to be the thing that many other students are doing? Ways in which you can find answers for yourself would be to learn what value, if any, admission in a US jurisdiction might have for your career. This value often differs widely from one country to the next, from one type of employer to the next, or from one practice area to the next. Let's assume, for example, that your ultimate career goal is to return to your home country and practice in a law firm. Would being admitted in New York or another US jurisdiction be helpful to that career path? Are prospective employers in your home country interested equally in lawyers with a US LL.M, regardless of whether they're admitted in the US? Talk to your career mentors to learn about whether there is a value added. Also, while it is sometimes the case that international LLMs will use optional practical training following their studies to work in a term-limited foreign associate position in the US, whether US-based employers are interested only in LLMs who are seeking the bar varies. For example, given what's involved in admission to New York's bar after passing the exam, practically speaking, it may not be until January after you graduate the LL.M that you are formally admitted to the bar. That's about halfway through the optional practical training period. Therefore, some employers seeking foreign associates in the US do not anticipate that those associates will be practicing New York law. Assuming there is a strong career or professional advantage for you, next you can judge whether the value is worth the additional costs. Most LLMs who graduate in May plan to take the July administration of the New York bar exam. There are additional costs of living from mid-May through July in the US, paying for private bar preparation courses. There are some filing fees and the like, as well as additional travel costs. For example, traveling from where you are located for your LL.M to the location for the bar exam, and subsequently, other admission processes like swearing in. These costs can easily run into the thousands of dollars, and that's beyond the costs associated with the LL.M degree itself. Finally, depending on the rules in the jurisdiction where you seek to establish eligibility, there may be requirements that you take certain types of classes during your LL.M studies to qualify for the exam. If so, you may find yourself making trade-offs in course selection between courses you want to take for your intellectual or professional interests and courses that you take just for the bar. That is, the choice to seek eligibility can impact what kind of academic experience you have in the LL.M. While my discussion of these questions may seem dissuasive, please know it's not intended to be. Again, many NYU LLMs are successful in achieving this professional goal. Notwithstanding, it is important to consider all aspects before making your own decision. Building on my last point about curricular trade-offs, sometimes students assume that they must complete a more general LL.M course in order to establish eligibility for the bar. At NYU Law, that's simply not the case for those who are seeking the New York bar exam. But the answer to this question may depend on the degree requirements at different law schools, as well as the rules regarding the bar exam and admission in the prospective jurisdiction. Given that general LLMs tend to give students wide berth as to the courses they will choose, and a specialization or concentration by definition means the students will be taking a quantum of courses in a particular field, it's worth the time to read and understand degree requirements like Anya and Juan were saying. Even with specializations or concentrations, I think you'll find that there can be a degree of flexibility that may make it possible for you to both pursue the course of study you wish, whether that's a general course or not, and meet curricular requirements to establish eligibility for the bar exam if there are any like there are in New York. In particular, students pursuing a more focused course of study may find that classes they would take for their own interest or to meet specialization or concentration requirements may also count toward the bar exam. Also, students may find that within a specialization or concentration, there remain a number of free electives that could be used for bar exam requirements. If you are starting to think this is complicated, you are not wrong. Rest assured that we at NYU Law and my colleagues at other US law schools have years of experience in advising students about their curriculum and how to meet their goals. The key is careful planning around a focus set of your own goals. Reach out early to the graduate legal studies advisors to make sure that you are planning appropriately. We're always glad to help. And now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Robin.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to all of my colleagues on the panel. As Tim mentioned, I'm Robin. I'm with the University of San Diego School of Law, and we are in Southern California, about 2 hours south of LA and close to the international border with Mexico, as well as being situated on the Pacific Rim. So it's a wonderful location. Just briefly, you'll see some programs that we offer here, both at the JD and the graduate law level. We have 5 LL.M programs, and the one that I would recommend to anybody considering San Diego in this audience would be our LL.M in comparative law program. That's the one designed especially for international attorneys and law graduates, and it's also our most flexible program in that it does allow you to take bar exam subjects if that is one of your goals, to maybe take the California bar, the New York bar, or some other state bar exam. The other LL.M programs that we offer presume that you've already completed an American JD degree and have therefore taken all of the subjects tested on pretty much any state bar exam. So the LL.M in comparative law is the one that I work with a lot for our international students. And we can move on to the next slide where we'll start getting into bar exam eligibility generally, and then for California in particular. Tra, our colleague on the panel, will be discussing shortly some different states that allow international LL.M graduates to sit for the bar exam. There are quite a few for your consideration. And as you may know, each of our 50 states in the United States, as well as the District of Columbia or DC, have their own separate bar jurisdiction. And so each jurisdiction has its own bar admission requirements and its own bar examination. Now, many of the examination components may be very similar or common, but there are some unique twists as you go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So it's important that you reach out to the bar authority in the state or the states that you are interested in sitting for the bar exam, because that particular office in that state or jurisdiction must determine your eligibility to sit for the bar exam. So I would not be able to independently verify that you are eligible to sit for an exam. I can give you general advice and guidance, but it's important to be in touch with the jurisdiction office directly in the state where you wish to practice law. And another important note, LL.M programs are not as lengthy as a JD program. Typically, you're taking 20-something credits at most law schools. And so that is not enough time or space to fit in all of the courses that are normally tested on each state's bar exam. So you're normally taking maybe between 4 to 6 subjects that are tested on bar exams. So that's important to talk with your academic advisor as you're discussing not only which state that you may wish to practice in and sit for the bar in, but what are your main areas of interest and what are some areas that are most challenging so you can focus on those within your LL.M curriculum. Okay, next slide, we'll go on to California eligibility. Now, being at the University of San Diego, the California State Bar Exam is the most popular one that our students decide to take. New York is probably a close second place, but we also have students interested in taking the Texas Bar Exam and other states. But for California, I just included some links, which I'm happy to share with the audience later, about where you can find general information on California bar exam requirements. And then they have a specific page with helpful information for foreign educated attorneys. And so these are links that I often share with our prospective students or current students to let them know how to get that conversation going with the State Bar of California to make sure they get official feedback on their eligibility to sit for the bar exam. Now, getting back to the point I made on the subjects tested on the bar exam, for California, there are 13 different covered areas. I'm going to drop in the chat box, if it will let me, the topics. It looks like it's appearing there, and you don't need to memorize these all, but it's a pretty wide variety of subjects that are tested in California. So knowing that, and also depending on the country where you come from, if it's a common law jurisdiction or not, may have some bearing. But in California, the main factor is whether you are already admitted to active practice in your home country jurisdiction. In other words, are you an attorney in good standing already? So if you can get a letter from your home country's bar office or jurisdiction stating that you are in good standing, most likely the California State Bar Office would say, you know what, you don't need to take any LLM or JD coursework. You already have the credentials necessary to sit for the bar exam. So study hard, perhaps, take a bar prep course, and good luck. Hopefully you will pass. But even if you're not required to take any LLM coursework, I think it's definitely to your advantage to consider doing so, because sitting in the classroom and learning the material from the US perspective will definitely enhance your chances of passing the bar exam in California. And for those of you who are not actively admitted to practice law or do not have a certificate of good standing from your home jurisdiction, most commonly the California State Bar Office will be looking for three things, which are noted on the slide here. First of all, they'll want you to do at least 1 year of law study, typically at the LLM level, but it can also be JD in theory, but 1 year of law study at any ABA approved law school. Secondly, they would want you to take a minimum of 20 credits at the LLM level. Our particular program, the LLM in comparative law, is 25 credits, but take at least 20 or plan to do that. And last, make sure that you take at least 4 subjects tested on the California bar exam, and one of those 4 should include professional responsibility. So these are the sorts of things that we normally see in letters or documents issued by the California State Bar Office, indicating what foreign attorneys must do to sit for the California bar exam. So I think that covers most of what I wanted to talk about in terms of California eligibility. And in just a moment, Andrew will be taking over to discuss New York bar exam information. So thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me. My name is Andrew Horsfall. I'm the Assistant Dean of International Programs at Syracuse University's College of Law here in Syracuse, New York. And it's my pleasure to talk to you today a bit about the New York bar exam specifically and the eligibility requirements for licensure. So this is the pathway to become licensed to practice in New York State. If we can go to the next slide, Tim. Thank you so much. So there's a lot of text here, and my presentation about the New York bar is captured on this one single slide, but I will tell you, you could break out this slide to an entire presentation in and of itself, just because it is so rich with information. The way I describe the eligibility requirements is there are sort of 3 different layers or buckets, but there's many pathways to licensure. There's no straight line or singular step-by-step process that everyone takes in sequence. Some of you may have already satisfied a few of these requirements. Others might wait until after their LLM program. But the core elements of the New York bar exam and licensure can be organized into these, what I call these 3 different layers. I'll first start with the administrative requirements. This is what I usually describe to students as the paperwork. So this requires you to first set up your profile with the New York Board of Law Examiners. You would fill out what's called the foreign evaluation form to the Board of Law Examiners on their website, the BOLI, we refer to it as. You're given a BOLI number, and that is really the first step in being able to establish a line of communication with the New York Board of Law Examiners. If you were to Google foreign evaluation form, New York bar, you would get a link to the website to start that process and create your profile. From there, you will receive communications from the New York Board of Law Examiners and have access to information regarding the other documents that you need to submit so that New York can take a look at and review your foreign prior legal education. So they want to see transcripts from your LL.B institution where you obtained your Bachelor of Laws. They may also ask for, need to see your copy of your license to practice or additional documentation which represents that your prior legal education would or could render you eligible to become a practicing lawyer in your home country abroad. So this is a lot of paperwork. It can take a lot of time. My recommendation to students is that if you are considering the bar exam, if you've gone through that inquiry that Tim was describing earlier, you've decided that the bar exam is right for you, and you're sitting in your home country now, I would start this process while you're home. I think it's always easier to communicate with your law schools, with your bar authorities if you need to, when you're in your home country, as opposed to trying to do that here from the US. From abroad, that can take a bit more time and require a bit more logistical management. So those are the kind of administrative paperwork requirements. I'll move through the other two layers a bit more quickly. In the middle here, we have the academic requirements. This, I think, is where myself and my colleagues really sit in terms of our role, primarily in terms of your time here in the US as an LL.M student. We like to know, I think, early on, the sooner the better, if you have plans to sit for the bar exam. That way we can give you the advice that you need to plan your academic schedule in a way that you are satisfying the academic requirements for the New York bar exam. When I say here, obtain a qualifying LL.M degree, that would mean a course that exposes you to the foundations of the American legal system, a course on US legal writing, and then additional subjects such as professional responsibility or legal ethics, and then at least 2 subjects which are tested on the New York bar exam. Again, all this information is available online if you were to Google New York Board of Law Examiners and start with the foreign evaluation form. We eventually will prepare a document to send to New York that validates that you have satisfied the academic requirements in your LL.M program. And so I just think that's worth mentioning too. Moving to the final column, and then I'll get to the pro bono stuff at the bottom. There are a few other professional and other requirements to consider as well. New York has a skills competency requirement. There are 5 different ways to satisfy this requirement. If you have been practicing in your home country or in another jurisdiction for at least 1 year, then you've already satisfied this requirement, which is great. There are 4 other pathways to explore and maybe work with your law school to determine which other alternative pathway might be best for you. And then last but not least, you should simply know that the traditional bar exam in New York is no longer simply a 2-day test that you study for. We have a few other exams. We have the New York Law course, which is an online course, accompanied by the New York Law exam, which tests the material covered on the New York Law course. And then we have here, I call CNF, character and fitness interview. So there are a few other steps, a few other layers to what we would consider the bar exam. And you just need to have that expectation that there are a few other pieces of the puzzle. Last but not least here is pro bono work. So New York does require that all students, before they become licensed, obtain at least 50 hours of pro bono service work. You can do this as an LL.M student or after your LL.M. I put this within the academic or the professional requirements because you can do it during or after your time here in your LL.M. So it is a lot. There's the paperwork, the academics, and then some of these other professional requirements. Happy to take questions later if you have them. But thank you so much, and appreciate my colleagues here as well for joining me today too. So thank you, Tim.
Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Cha and I'm the Assistant Dean for International and Graduate Affairs at the Ohio State University Law School. Next slide, please. I'm happy to join. Next slide, please. Yeah, I'm happy to join my colleagues today to share with you more information about my exam and my admissions in the US. I've done a little small survey of to see what are the US states besides California and New York that would admit foreign trained lawyers and law students. And there are more states than what I listed here. However, I chose these states to present to you just because these states, mostly because these states have at least one or bigger cities in the states that present more opportunities for LLM students after the LLM program, including law firm jobs. So there are two major categories of states here that admit foreign trained lawyers and law students. There is the majority of the states will admit international students from common law and non-common law backgrounds, but there is also a minority of states that could admit only common law students. As you see here, that Colorado, New Hampshire, Oregon could admit only common law students. Next state, next slide, please. So although these states are open to admitting international students, each state, as Robin mentioned earlier, each state has its own rule regarding by exam and by admissions. So based on my survey, there are three major requirements in regards to bar admissions and bar exams. The first is that most states will look at overall, it would look at whether your law degree in your home country would be equivalent to the US JD. And that's why most states will require you to go through an evaluation process. This process can be more simple in one state and less and more complicated in another state. But if overall, if your degree is not considered equivalent, then you would have to meet additional legal education requirements. Some states require you to earn an LL.M degree, but some other states do not require you to have an LL.M degree, but to earn additional number of credits. And you can earn this additional number of credits either in one law school or in more than one law school. Like in DC, you can kind of like collect those credits over time without even earning an LL.M degree. So in some states like Texas or Massachusetts, for non-common law students, the states require even that you be admitted to practice law in your home country, or you would have actively practiced law in your home country for a number of years before you seek admission in one state. I would suggest that you follow the link I embedded here later if these slides will be shared with you to buy the online comprehensive guide to bar admission requirements on the website of the National Conference of Bar Examiners. And you will be able to see every single state's rule regarding bar exam eligibility and bar admission. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So a common question among international students is whether I can be admitted to practice law in another state if I pass the bar exam in one state. So the general question is, as Andrew mentioned earlier, passing the bar exam itself will not allow admission, but you will have to meet other requirements as well. So of course, if you pass the bar exam in one state and then meet other requirements, you will be admitted to practice law in that specific state. However, if you want to not to take the bar exam in another state and get admitted to that state, there are two ways. The first way is that you would transfer this so-called UBE score. So there are about 40 states in the US that adopt the uniform bar exam. If you take the uniform bar exam in one state, you can transfer later after you pass the UBE, you can transfer that UBE score later to the other UBE state and then seek admission that way. Now, keep in mind that the UBE score only enable you to bypass taking the bar exam itself in another state, but you still have to meet other bar admission eligibility in another state, such as the additional legal education that I mentioned earlier, like the New York bar would require you to have an LL.M degree, for example, right? So that is one way to seek admission in another state after you pass the bar exam in one state. Another way is that you don't have to take the bar exam, or you may not even have to meet the additional education, legal education requirement if you have been admitted to practice law in one US jurisdiction for a number of years, like 3 or 5 years, or if you have actively practiced law in the US, in one US jurisdiction for a number of years. So that would allow you. For example, I passed the New York bar exam, and after 3 years, I can seek admission to the Washington, D.C. bar without having to meet any other requirements. Next slide, please. So now another question is, how would my LLM program prepare you for the bar exam, right? So almost every LLM program would offer you courses on subjects tested on the multi-state component of a bar exam. So this multi-state component basically tests the knowledge of the law that's common to all states. So it's either federal or common law. No state-specific law will be tested in the UBA exam, for example. But if you want to sit for a non-UBA bar exam, like in California, the California law will be tested in the bar exam, right? So it may be an advantage for you to take the LLM in California, because then you will be able to learn the specific law of the state of California, while other law schools outside California will not teach you the California law. The second way for the law school to prepare for the bar exam is that you can explore with the LLM program whether you can have some form of free access or subsidized access to the bar prep course, as my colleagues mentioned earlier. Personally, I found this course very important for LLM students, and I would not have passed the bar exam without this kind of bar prep course. It prepares you intensively for between 8 and 10 weeks. It's like a marathon, and then it will be very helpful. So at Ohio State, for example, we decided to subsidize and to give JD and LLM students this bar prep course for free. And last but not least, try to take advantage of all the workshops that your LLM programs organize for you throughout the program. I know that many programs like Ohio, including Ohio State, will organize workshops to help you learn about bar exam taking techniques and skills. And we invite representatives from this bar prep provider in the country to give you workshops. And so it's very useful. These workshops are very useful for you. So try to take advantage of these opportunities as well. So thank you for listening. This is the end of my presentation. So I will pass it to my colleague, Lauren.
Thank you, Tra. My name is Lauren Wasson, and I'm Associate Director of Graduate Legal Studies at Cornell Law School. I'm going to be highlighting bar exam passage rates and post-bar exam considerations. My colleagues have covered courses you can take during your LLM year and how to qualify for the bar exam in states which allow foreign educated applicants to sit. Let's talk about historical bar passage success rates. Keeping a realistic perspective, the bar exam can be difficult to pass. This is true for US educated and foreign educated candidates alike. Next slide, please. As an example, let's take a look at the statistics in New York for the most recent bar examination this past July. There were 9,609 New York bar candidates who took the July 2022 exam, including 3,311 foreign educated applicants. The left-hand column of the chart lists 3 categories: all takers, which describes everyone who sat for the exam, and is comprised of the 2 other categories below it. First timers describes candidates taking the exam for the first time, and repeaters describes candidates who previously failed the exam and decided to take it again. You'll note that the percentage pass rate is highest for first-time test takers, with a 75% pass rate for all candidates. However, when you consider foreign educated test takers as a separate cohort, the passing rate for that group is just over half, at 52%. This statistic shows that, based on historical success rates, about half of foreign educated test takers in New York will pass the exam on their first try, and about half will fail and may need to consider retaking the exam again in the future. Next slide, please. On this slide, I've included statistics for a few other states, including California, Texas, and Washington State. Note that the full July 2022 statistics for California have not yet been published, so I've included the numbers for the July 2021 general exam instead. For all 3 of these states, the pass rate for foreign educated first-time test takers is around 25 or 26%, which is just about a quarter of the applicants. This brings me back to the point I made earlier. The bar exam can be very difficult to pass, and you need to carefully consider the time, effort, and expense involved before undertaking this endeavor. Next slide, please. If you are successful in passing the bar exam, what happens next? As many of my colleagues have alluded to, passing the bar exam is just one step in a more complex process of seeking admission to practice law in your desired state. The next phase involves meeting a variety of requirements before actually being admitted to the bar and sworn into practice, and then maintaining good standing as an attorney in future years. As some of my colleagues covered earlier, you'll have several requirements to satisfy prior to being admitted to the bar. For example, in New York, you must complete the MPRE, the New York Law Course, New York Law Exam, Skills Competency Requirement, and 50 hours of pro bono work. When you are ready to seek admission in New York, you'll need to submit an application for admission, including a $375 registration fee. You'll also submit affidavits of good moral character and legal employment affidavits from every law-related position you've held, including paid and unpaid internships, associate positions, and volunteer work in law school clinics or elsewhere. Finally, there will be a character and fitness interview prior to swearing in. Then, to remain in good standing as a newly admitted New York attorney, you'll need to complete 32 continuing legal education, or CLE, credits during your first 2 years of admission. Note that every 2-year period thereafter, you'll need to complete an additional 24 CLE credits and pay ongoing registration renewal fees. Requirements do vary from state to state, so be sure to do your research and understand what is expected as you consider taking the bar exam and all that it entails. Most states will require yearly or biennial registration fees and continuing legal education to maintain good standing. And it's important for you to be aware of these ongoing costs and requirements out front. Now that concludes the group portion of this presentation. We hope that you will visit each of the representatives here today in our individual Zoom rooms to talk more about your goals for your LLM year and why our schools may be a good fit for you. We are happy to answer your questions. I believe the links are going to be posted in the chat, so you should copy and paste those Zoom links into a document on your own computer so that you'll have them when this session ends. You can also download the PDF that will be added into the chat. But thank you for attending, and please use the links provided to join us in our individual Zoom rooms momentarily.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the information you shared today. So I just pasted the links to the individual Zoom rooms in the chat, and I'm adding that same information in a PDF format. So as we just heard, please make sure that you try to attend all individual rooms that you're interested in. It should be available to everyone else. So with that, on behalf of Education USA Brazil, I'd like to thank our speakers today for the information you brought to this group part of our session. And I'm sure you'll be answering questions and bringing even more interesting information to our participants. So thank you very much. The recording from today's session will be available on Education USA YouTube's channel. And see you for our session tomorrow. Thank you very much.